Wake up, it's 2099, and we have to stop the iMac G3 from turning us from babies into translucent Bondi blue batteries. I've had my eye on you for a while. You've got some real skills. Not many men can unhinge their jaw and swallow bugles whole like you can. Now that you've taken your blue pill and you're rock hard, you can finally open your mind to the real world. Out there, man, with all those video games and music videos and movies, all that's fake. Corporate plans to keep your dopamine receptors firing. This is real life. Cold, hard, concrete life with an oatmeal dispenser that inexplicably comes from the ceiling. You are living in a simulation, currently under development by the devil himself, Will Wright. If we don't stop him and send you back in time to 1999, in the following February, he releases a computer virus that will bring the world to its knees by creating the worst thing of all, the casual gamer. He calls it The Sims. Here in the real world, we rebel against the sim. We exist in a sort of matrix, if you will. Get dressed. The crew can't wait to meet you. You're currently on our ship, the SS Lawrence Fishburne. We've got an ace navigator with our pilot Don Tobacco, a top-tier hacker on the ones and twos, Big Dong Dennis Ramirez, and our security specialist, the baddest motherfucker in the Matrix, Pure Moods herself, Enya. You can call me Steak Sauce. I'll be your guide. They say that I'm the savior of humanity, and yes, those rumors that you heard, they're true. I can slam dunk a skyscraper. We'll get you a cool hacker name soon. All you gotta do is go onto the internet, type in the name of your first pet and your mom's credit card number, and it spits out the name the world will know once we stop the sim from teaching a generation of children that you can have sex with your hot neighbor in the hedge separating you from her dad who keeps revving his motorcycle at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Once you met all the guys, you'll get to meet our fearless leader, Scoop Beanbag. He knows over 1 million karates and can jump like really high. He needs you to tell us everything you know about 1999, but specifically through the lens of popular bands, movies, and video games so we can unleash our master plan to stop the sim from happening. We call it Y2K. It's going to bring about the end of electronic arts once its computers can't figure out that the year 2000 comes after 1999. What are they going to do once their computers think it's the time of horse and buggies? I'd like to see them design a tasteful 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom suburban bungalow now. Those extra zeros are going to ignite a revolution. Welcome to Perfect Reload. It's Miami Steve, and I'm here at Miami Steve's Used Console Emporium, where you can get the hottest release in 1999 that fell off the truck prices. That's right, Sega Dreamcast out the door, just $99. Need financing? We offer a 10-year plan at 3,000% interest. No credit? That's okay. If you miss a payment, I'll send Crusher and Low Blow to your front door and beat your husband blind in front of your children. Oh, I'm gaming here. No class anymore with these people. Remember back in 9999 when Sonic stopped running to the right and started running straight into your gabagool? Who can forget straight up bangers like Dynamite Cop, Blue Stinger, Soul Calibur, Trick Style, Ready to Rumble Boxing, and the classic of all classics, the Carmela's Lasagna of video games, Sega Bass Fishing. Oh! Now you don't have to wait for your teenage son to hate you for causing his existential dread. Your wife says you gotta wake his ass up at 6 a.m. to drag him out to some lake and sit there and pretend like he don't know what it is you really do and forge some type of facsimile of a father-son bond? Now you can take your plastic rod and reel and cast wherever and whenever you want. Is your daughter watching Singled Out on the TV in the living room? Outta here, bitch! Daddy gonna catch some fucking marlins, except no scrubs, and come on down to Miami Steve's Used Console Emporium and say, hey, Miami Steve, I want it that way, and get you a Dreamcast today. Hey, it's Normie Steve here. I figured out how to time travel into my own video. Pretty cool that all it takes is huffing everything under my sink all at once. So the Dreamcast holds a pretty special place for me. It's the first video game system I ever got at launch. I get to skip school to pick it up in the morning and head back to my grandparents' house for the day to play around with it. The wait the next day at school to get home and dive into it was excruciating. I couldn't wait for the weekend to come fast enough so I could hook it into me like an IV. They didn't have any available around me, so we ended up having to pre-order one at an electronics boutique about an hour and a half away. Unfortunately, they also didn't get their entire shipment of games that day, so offerings were slim, but I did take home Sonic Adventure and Ready to Rumble boxing. My birthday and Christmas that year brought even more games. I was devastated a couple of years later when the Dreamcast was killed. It felt like my system. Sure, I had a PS1 and an N64 already, but I got them after they came out and never really owned a lot of games outside of maybe a dozen or so on the N64 and probably around 20 for the PlayStation. I mostly rented games, so my attachment to those systems feels very temporary. The Dreamcast is where I was actually owning and playing games over and over again. I can't tell you how many hours I put into Virtua Tennis and Crazy Taxi. To be completely honest, I took a pretty big break from console gaming following the demise of the Dreamcast. I had a PS2, which I did get at launch, but I never played any of its biggest games like Metal Gear, Jak and Daxter, Sly, Final Fantasy, Shadow of the Colossus, stuff like that. I switched over to the PC, got into Unreal, and stayed there for years. Up until this year, I actually owned my original Dreamcast, which still worked. The box still had the receipt stapled to it. Despite playing I don't know how many different systems before, it's always going to feel like my first real console. Greetings, Padawan, it is I, Stove Beyond Kenobi, here to talk about what was going on outside of video games in the year of our Lucas 1999. Of course, the most well-received piece of cinema, the film experience of a lifetime that won every conceivable major movie award, was Star Wars Episode I: The Phantom Menace. George Lucas's 2-hour-long Pepsi advertisement changed all of our lives for the better. But it wasn't the only cinema experience taking the nation by storm. Who could forget the movie that shocked everyone as we watched the corpse of Bruce Willis trick a small child into thinking he was alive with the Sixth Sense? The Matrix inspired a generation of teenagers tired of being pushed into lockers to put on trench coats and become IT consultants for faceless corporations. American Beauty showed us the beauty in lifting heavy in your garage, collecting Nazi memorabilia, and plastic bags floating in the wind. Austin Powers peed for a very long time. The world was not enough for Pierce Brosnan and Julia Roberts fell down Notting Hill. Woody and Buzz were back fighting crime in Toy Story 2, and Brendan Fraser beat the shit out of Egypt as he destroyed all the mummies. Oh, thank God, I think I might be finally out of this urine-soaked hellhole. If anyone ever gives you the opportunity to time travel, you tell them no. The regular version of you is probably horrible enough. You don't need to see alternate dimension possibilities. It's probably as good a time as any to get into the biggest games of the year because that's what made 1999 such a special time in video game history. Let's start with what may be the most influential game to come out of that year, and probably not the first one that comes to mind. Let's dive into the Saving Private Ryan simulator that is Medal of Honor. The reference to Saving Private Ryan isn't without context, as Steven Spielberg, the director of the seminal war movie, was directly involved with the creation of Medal of Honor. Spielberg both produced the game and contributed to its story, as he had an obvious passion for World War II, as well as a son who was heavily into GoldenEye 007. Medal of Honor quickly established itself as not only one of the best first-person shooters on console, but laid the foundation for one of the biggest franchises in gaming for the next decade. Eventually, it was overtaken by Call of Duty, which these days is known for its modern-day or slightly futuristic war setting, but started as a World War II game. Sadly, Medal of Honor couldn't stay relevant and eventually died off following some unsuccessful attempts to breathe new life into the series around a decade ago. No matter what the legacy ultimately ends up being for Medal of Honor, ahead of its time or lost to time, few that played it will ever forget some of its signature moments like storming Omaha Beach. Look at all the fly honeys in this place. It's about to pop off, y'all. I'm Boy Band Steve, here to unzip my pleather pants and shoot a hot ball with the ball and bang the dang diggy diggy all over the smooth jams of 1999. Everyone knows that all boy bands have to have a bad boy, shout out to AJ and Chris Kirkpatrick, but I'm the baddest of them all. I got my first tattoo at 11 and tried to set my girlfriend's dad on fire. He said I had an attitude problem when I told his wife that I'm not a punk bitch when she asked me if I wanted gravy on my potatoes at Christmas. Of course I want gravy, Carol! It's not my problem I fell into the Christmas tree and stepped on a bunch of presents. Maybe you should be putting that shit in the living room where people be falling. Anyways, enough about Craig and his Costco membership having ass. I'm about to give you the 411 on the hottest jams of 99. We were all living La Vida Loca with Ricky Martin and my main man, the man with a giant list of ladies' names. One almost as long as all the girls who got restraining orders against me, Lou Bega and his fifth mambo. We all learned about auto-tune with Cher, and man, that allowed pretty much everyone with a dream and a voice to make music. Everyone got laid when they put All Star by Smash Mouth on their JVC Kaboom box. Thanks to a paid advertisement by Burger King, the Backstreet Boys let everyone know they want it that way. The clubs were popping thanks to Eiffel 65 and Blue Dabba Dee Babba Doo Dabba Dee I Would Die for a Guy. Oh, I can't forget about the fine ladies at TLC. They don't want no scrubs because a scrub is a guy with a burned down house from Left Eye. All right, I finally got control of the interdimensional remote control again. So let's get into our next game. 1999 also gave birth to adult human man Tony Hawk with the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. THPS, as the kids call it, was known for its super addicting combo-centric gameplay, easy to pick up and play mechanics, and inventing punk music. In all seriousness though, the first game in the series definitely introduced a whole generation, myself included, to some super influential bands like Primus, The Vandals, and future Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, Goldfinger. The blending of its eclectic soundtrack, accessible, over-the-top, but most importantly fun gameplay, and the cultural surge of skateboarding and extreme sports into the mainstream made for a combination that launched Pro Skater to be in the top 25 highest-selling PS1 games of all time. Altogether, the first 5 years for the franchise brought in over $700 million in sales. Fever for the original game hasn't died down as a very successful remake of the first two games released in 2020 and sold over 1 million copies within the first 2 weeks of release. Whether you were a skater boy or not, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater crossed all gaming boundaries and truly cemented itself as one of the most beloved series of all time. Just like boofing cocaine, Roller Coaster Tycoon is the gateway drug for people my age. It introduced a whole generation of kids to the sim genre. Most of us had suckled from the concrete teat of SimCity growing up, or had that proto-sim experience from your local school board and mandatory Oregon Trail play sessions during computer class. Now that the pangs of puberty were rearing its ugly Hydra-like heads, we needed our next fix, and Roller Coaster Tycoon was the right pusher for the job. The game taught you the basics of running an amusement park, all the way from setting ticket prices, making sure people had places to take a dump, and making sure that those same dumpers had a safe place to exit reality, as we all made roller coasters that stopped midway through to create an opportunity to meet one's ancestors. Imagine thousands of innocent souls all volunteering to fill a mass grave for the low cost of a family outing at their favorite theme park. In the matter of an hour, little Billy could win a stuffed tiger at ball toss, down a foot-long glizzy coated in old ketchup, and get a skull caved in at the bumper cars that were installed wrong because you cheaped out on your safety budget. This Saw Trap Simulator created a lasting legacy, going on to be one of the most iconic PC games of all time. It set up a franchise that had releases over the next 20 years, and it's still relevant to a generation born well after its release. Perhaps the game I have the strongest nostalgic and personal attachment to from 1999 is Unreal Tournament. I spent an incalculable amount of time playing the Unreal franchise, starting with the first game as I shunned society to spend countless nights alone with my bot enemies in endless multiplayer matches. When Unreal Tournament released the following year, I couldn't get enough of it. I legitimately stopped playing other video games for a couple of years following the demise of the Dreamcast in 2001, and I only played Unreal Tournament. Around the same time of its release was when music became the most important thing in my life, as I started playing in my first bands. My parents graciously allowed their basement to be the practice spot for any band I was in up until basically when I moved out. Because I spent so much time down there practicing, I decided to move my computer down there as I was learning how to record music as well. There are definitely times I spent more than 24 hours straight in a damp, unfinished basement, glued to either my drum kit or the computer, mowing down bots, or if the connection was good enough, actual other human beings in Team Deathmatch. The announcer's voice is seared into some primal part of my brain. Unreal Tournament still to this day is the first-person shooter I compare all others to. It's easy to get into, it has a difficult curve if you want to master it, and a sense of speed and excitement that was a lethal combination that not many games have ever lived up to. It was my introduction into online gaming and made video games seem like such a larger activity than you alone in a room, lit only by the glow of a CRT, or perhaps a few friends stuffed onto a couch playing some Mario Kart. You actually felt like you were in the future, connected to something bigger than you. I think that's a feeling lost these days as online gaming is so commonplace, and so many players these days don't know a world without it. But if you were around at the beginning, it brings back memories that can never be recreated. Whoa, 1999 sounds like it was a badass year. Nintendo released Super Smash Bros., which is still going strong today, with the company telling those playing it in a competitive setting that they aren't allowed to eat or pee. Mario Party destroyed countless friendships, and Pokemon Snap and Stadium kept pumping life into one of the biggest franchises ever. Sony scared us all with Silent Hill and had us exploring Miami and San Francisco in Driver. Microphones were inserted into every orifice to make Gran Turismo 2 the most realistic racing sim of its time. And Siphon Filter turned kids who got to rent a game for the weekend into super spies. Pokemon Yellow gave countless kids the fantasy of Pikachu following you around as you explored an amazing world full of magical creatures you wish could come to life. Resident Evil 3 terrified us, System Shock 2 challenged us, Grand Theft Auto 2 was the prelude to the biggest revolution in video game history, and EverQuest connected a generation online. I think you've given us enough information about that year, so now we can inject Y2K into the computer servers over at EA. We can stop this apocalypse. Will Wright will be burned at the stake for his crimes, and those robot bastards will fade into oblivion as we stop a future burning like an eternal tire fire. You saved us all from filthy casual gamers with their sane takes on video game reviews, stimulating the industry by paying for games and supporting developers that release amazing content. Video games are and only should be for the hardcore, the leather-bound basement dwellers that know that their opinion should be presented in multi-paragraph form with minimal grammar checking on forums. Thank you. Now video games can be reserved for only those who deserve to play them. I've got a lot of work to do now. We must prepare. But until then, I have to get back to my day job. I review games I've never played before to lower their Metacritic scores.